Hello, this is Shannon. I'm very grateful that you've stopped by my channel today. I'll be making a winter card and gift tags with products from Sunny Studios. Starting with the winter scene stamp set, I first stamp onto a piece of scrap paper, then without re-inking the stamp, I stamp onto a piece of Gina K Designs masking paper. I do this since the masking paper can be a little slick and I don't want the black ink to contaminate the ink blending I'll be doing later on in this video. Off camera, I will fussy cut the top of the scene so that I'll be able to mask the village from my ink blending. Here I have the same winter scene stamp set. I've gone ahead and stamped the village image onto a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch piece of Hammermill 100-pound smooth white cardstock. This is one of my favorite cardstocks to do Copic coloring on. If Copic coloring's not your jam, you can skip ahead to 27 minutes to see how I complete the card and tags. Here I start the pine trees with BG99. I turn the panel upside down because I prefer to flick the brush away from me. Next, I will use BG96 to pull the color further out, then we'll finish blending with BG93. I'll play some music while I finish coloring the pine trees.
You know who made it. 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 You know who made it.
Next, we're going to color the trunks of the trees, starting with E25. For the smaller trees, I'm just using E25. For the larger tree trunks, I'm using E25 and E23. And what I'm doing is putting the shadow where it would, where the pine needles would shade and where the ground comes up. Next, I'm using W3, which I'll soon discover is way too light for this house or cabin. Um, I'm starting, when I don't know exactly where to do the highlights, I call it easy Copic coloring, where I just do a dark shade at the top and bottom and fill in with a light shade in the middle or side to side, whichever. Next, I was still with W3, doing the tops and the bottom of the cabin. I'll come in with W2 and blend that out. Realize that it's just much lighter than I'd like. So now I'm coming in with W5, starting that process over again, starting at the top and the bottom, laying down that color. And then I'll blend that out with the W3, and I'm much happier with the way that looks. Since it is going to be a night scene, I didn't want a really light cabin. Just blending that out. And I'll use the same colors on the next cabin too. So W5 again, top and the bottom. And W3 to blend that out. Next is W7 for the roof. It's using the same method where I'm putting the darkest color at the top and bottom, and coming in with W5 to blend that together. W7 again, at bottom. Just flicking that color up, and W5 to blend that together. Now for the chimneys, I'm using R89, and I'm just using the artist uh, drawn lines to put the darkest color, and I blend that out with the R85. Next is BV25 for the small cabins, using the same easy Copic coloring, putting the color at the top, the darkest color at the top and bottom, and putting the highlight color in the middle. And that I'm using C5. Blend those, blend that together. The other small cabin, same color combination, BV25, color at the top and bottom. Blend it together with the C5. Next is the roofs. I'm using the same color combination that I used on the other two roofs, W7 and W5. Can't make up my mind here. Okay, so for the windows, I'm going to be blending a night sky, so I wanted to put lights on the windows. That's why I'm using the Y19. For the doors, I'm starting with R29 on the two larger cabins, then R27, R35 is a highlight color, blending that together. And then I decide it'll be a red door neighborhood. So there was a movie about with a red door, and I can't, for the name of it, for the life of me, think of what the name of that movie was. The I See Dead People movie. It was a red door, right? If you know the name of that movie, leave it in the comments. I, for the life of me, can't think of it. Okay, in the chimneys, I'm using the same red combination, the R89 and R85 to blend that out. And for the little sidewalks, I'm just putting down C3. For the snow, I'm using BG 000, and I'm going to put the shadow on the horizon and in between the cabins and the trees. And then the little snow mounds alongside the cabins. And I'm bringing that color all the way down, just doing flicking brush strokes to show some difference in shading, just blending that back and forth across the page. I'm darkening up the edges here, the bottom. Next we have the snowman, and I'm going to start with, okay, this comes from the Sunny Studio Snowman Kisses, and there's 4 snowmen and several snowflakes and little snow dots, snow flurries, I'm not sure what you would call them. Starting with C7 for the top hat, taking that color in towards the center, rounding across the top of the top hat, and then just along the other side. And C5 is my highlight. That out. Next on the buttons, the same C combination. C7 is the darkest color, and C5, I'm blending that out. Decided to leave red for last. Starting with BG99, the same, this is the same green combination that I used for the pine trees, BG99, BG96, and BG93. Just doing that, the strip around the top hat. And for the red berries, I'm using R29, just where the berries meet. Blending that out with R35. Next, I'm using a different green combination for the holly leaves. It's G28, the base of the leaves, G17, bringing that color out just a little bit, and finishing with the highlight color of G05. And I will use the green combination that I used on the pine trees and the strip around the hat. I will use the same combination for the scarf, which is BG99. Putting it at the ends of the flowing ends of the scarf, and the ends also under the snowman's head. That would be the snowman's neck. Snowmen have necks. Next is BG96, pulling that color closer to the center of each of the portions of the image. These colors are so close together that it doesn't take much effort to blend them. Then BG93, just to finish that up. Have a nice highlight. And for the carrot nose, using YR68, YR16, and YR04. And this is again what I call my easy Copic coloring, where you just start with your darkest color, move to a mid-tone, and end with a light color. Here I've got the BG 000 again for the snow of the snowman. Get around the completely around the body, underneath the scarf, to the left of the buttons, and around the other side of the body. I'm also trying to round out my brush strokes so that it doesn't look square. Okay, for the next snowman, we're going to use the same color combinations that I've been using, starting with the R29. I'm doing the stripes on the snowman's hat. My easy Copic coloring method, where I'm starting with the darkest color on the top and bottom. Come in with the mid-tone and pull that color closer to the center. Then finally, the highlight color is R35, blending that all out. I usually don't like to do the red first, then I run the risk of pulling red into my other color combinations. Here I'm doing the top of the snowman's hat, starting with the R29 again. And pulling that color towards the middle with the R27, leaving the room for the highlight, which is the R35. And the same green combination we used on the previous snowman and on the pine trees, BG99, top and bottom of the stripes. BG96, pull that color closer to the center. BG93 to blend it all out, giving a nice highlight in the center, the stripes. Also do the scarf with the same color combination, BG99, BG96, and BG93 if I can fit them all in there. Sometimes just putting a little dot of another color will really brighten that, make it more pleasing to the eye. Finishing off with that BG93 and starting again with the R29 up in the bottom of the stripes. R27, pulling the color closer to the center, just putting a little dot of color. R35 is a highlight color to blend it all out. And the carrot noses, YR68 at the base, YR16 in the middle, and YR04 at the end. Realized I forgot his little pom-pom on the top of his hat, so starting again with the BG99. BG96, pulling the color closer to the end, and finishing off with the BG93. BG000 under the hat, around the sides of his face, of his scarf, rounding out those areas beneath the hat, underneath the scarf. That's where the shadow would be, and around the edges. Next, we're going to take all the snowflakes from the Snowman Kisses and from the winter scenes stamp sets, and I've got them all across where the top of the scene will be, and I'm stamping them with Versamark ink. So I'm stamping this with Versamark ink since I'm going to do ink blending, and it will be a blend resist. Here I'm covering the stamped images with clear embossing powder, tapping that off, excess, and bringing in my Wagner heat tool. I have it on setting 2 so it'll get nice and hot, and I let it warm up for a bit before I bring it to the paper. Then once the heat gun is warm, I'll heat the paper from underneath. That gives a less splotchy embossed look. That aside. Now with my waffle flower stencil mat, I'm going to bring in my mask. I first bring in my Deep Sea Lawn Fawn dye ink, start to blend and realize I forgot my mask. Tapping off and bringing the ink to paper and realizing I forgot the mask. So here I put the mask over the village part of the scene. Now I'll bring that deep sea ink. I'll brush from the mask to the paper in hopes of not lifting that mask. And you'll see the snowflakes appear. Always, every time I re-ink the brush, always tapping off just a bit before I bring it to the paper. That'll prevent some of the blotchiness, which you'll notice that it will appear blotchy immediately after blending, but that dye ink will have time to soak into the paper and will smooth out. Lawn Fawn's dye inks are uh, quality inks, so they do smooth out after giving them a little time to set. I'm just going to continue blending, darkening up that sky, leaving the area that's closest to the village a little lighter. You know how a town, even though they don't have street lights in this village, they usually towns have an illumination. So that was the goal. Now wipe that ink off of those embossed images. The best part is removing that mask. And here I've stamped the other border um, from the Winter Scenes stamp set by Sunny Studio. I've gone ahead and colored all of the pine trees off camera and stamped and fussy cut a mask for this scene, and this is what I will create my tags from, is this background. And I've also stamped the snowflakes with the Versamark ink, so I can go ahead and just blend the deep sea ink over them, get that nice resist. And even though there's not a town here, it's just a forest, I'm going to leave it lighter towards the bottom where the trees are and blend it darker at the top. Just a little visual interest. Tapping off excess ink every time I re-ink the brush. Also blending from the paper, I'm sorry, from the masking paper to the sky scene in hopes of not lifting that mask inking over my images. We're almost done here. The big reveal. Never get bored of this. There are a few spots where my mask covered that I'll just color in with a Copic marker. I believe I used B37. Okay, now I'm going to start with my sentiment. I've used my anti-static powder tool, and I will ink up my stamp with Versamark ink, I'm sorry, Versafine ink, which is a black pigment ink. I will stamp my sentiment twice to make sure there's enough ink to hold on to the embossing powder. Next, I will sprinkle some clear embossing powder over my sentiment, tap off the excess, and bring in my Wagner heat tool and use setting number 2. Let that warm up, and after I've let that warm up some, I'll heat it from the bottom. When I heat it underneath, it creates less of a bumpy sentiment or a bumpy image. Here I'm using the Inside Greetings Holiday stamp set by Sunny Studio to stamp my inside sentiment. And I've misplaced stamps. Here we go. And it reads, "Wishing you the merriest Christmas and all the best in the new year." I'm using my Tailored Expression Misty Alignment tool to center my sentiment on the inside panel. And I'll use some Lawn Fawn jet black ink to stamp up my sentiment. I like to use the hybrid ink to stamp the inside greeting so that it'll dry quickly and I won't have to leave the card front open for any time period to allow the ink to dry. When I use the hybrid ink, it dries almost instantly. Okay, and next we're going to use the Scotch ATG tape runner to adhere the card panel to the card front. I'll use my desktop to just align the panel with the card front or the card base. And here we have the colored snowman. I use my reverse tweezers, and in the bottle with the fine nozzle I have acrylic matte medium, which dries clear and it dries matte. So if any of the glue were to erp out the sides of my images, it will dry almost invisible. You won't even notice it. It's there when it dries. Just pressing them down. And my last image. And if you guys have not looked at any of Sunny Studio stamp sets, I highly recommend them. They have the cutest, whimsical characters and scenes for their stamp sets. Here's one of the tags that I put together. It's I didn't notice when I stamped my image that there's a slight slope, so 2 of 3 of the tags that I cut from each panel has a sloping edge that isn't quite even. Anyways, it is what it is. While I'm fussing with this bow, I want to thank you so much for watching this video. I would love to hear from you in the comments below. Let me know what you like about this project or even what you might have done differently. I'm new to this YouTube method of sharing my creations. I can use all the constructive criticism I can get. If you like this project, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe if you'd like to see more of my future projects. Click on the notification bell after you subscribe and YouTube will let you know the next time I post a video. All of the supplies I've used to create this card are linked below. Thanks for watching and I'll see you next video. Still struggling with that bow. I created a total of 5 tags and only the one that I did on video gave me a hard time. Here are the 5 tags and the finished card. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye for now.